If you could please do me a favor, I have one too. We want to silence our cell phones. We want to be courteous and appropriate to our guest speaker. I remember years ago when I was just a young man, they used to say, you turn off those beepers and turn off that Nextel for the guest speaker. That was a long time ago. So let's be respectful to our speaker. I'm going to put mine on silence too. I'll introduce our guest speaker, Johnny from Johnny's Jigs. Welcome, sir. You have the floor. Thank you.
All right. Man, big crowd. I'm nervous. Yeah, really. Where do I start? My name's Captain Johnny Steadham. I'm from South Florida, and I'm one of the founders of Johnny Jigs Tackle Company. As well as last year, we actually decided to purchase another jigging company called Temple Reef. So that's who I'm representing today. But we started. I mean, it wasn't supposed to happen. It was just kind of something that just did happen. But Johnny Jigs was basically just a hobby for me. I started slow pitch jigging about a decade ago, and I learned about it on a headboat going on the Yankee Cap out of Key West, actually Stock Island, and came back to my local tackle shop, and I'm like, I want to get a slow pitch jigging rod. And the guy looked at me cross-eyed and had no idea what slow pitch jigging was. But who's heard of slow pitch jigging here? Just to kind of get a, yeah, okay. If I would have said that 10 years ago, none of you probably would have raised your hand. Nobody knew what it was. But it's so cool to see the progression of that. So we started with just like we were like bringing blanks in of jigs from like Pennsylvania, and then painting them in my construction warehouse. I used to be in the construction industry. And then at night, watching football or whatever on TV, I would tie assist hooks, and I would give a pair of assist hooks with each jig, and we sold them on eBay. And that was the start of Johnny Jigs. I had a little baker's rack behind my construction desk with just a few bins that we got from the dollar store, full of just a few jigs that we were making, and then it all of a sudden we started putting out YouTube videos, and we couldn't make them fast enough. We couldn't make them ourselves. And now you can find Johnny Jigs throughout the United States, probably in over 100 stores in the United States. You can find us international, South America, Central America, as well as Europe. We're all over the place. So it's a pretty cool story of how slow pitch jigging has changed my life. I had a beater boat. Now I got a pretty decent boat. Nothing fancy, but I got a nice boat now, and I get to go fishing a lot, and I get to make videos, and I've got to hang out with some of the coolest, all the guys that I was watching on YouTube. Now I get to go fishing with them sometimes. It's kind of cool. Really cool story. So I'm going to talk to you guys tonight about slow pitch jigging, kind of the origin of slow pitch jigging, where it came from, and then I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of the gear. I'm going to get into some technique from shallow to even a little bit deeper, but I'm going to tell you guys this first before I start. Just tie on a jig, put it in front of a fish's face. Chances are they're going to eat it, right? You're going to catch a fish, right? Move it in front of their face, they're going to eat it. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to take what I just told you and make it very technical and complicated for you, okay? So just remember that I said that just tie on a jig, go out there, get it in front of a fish's face, and you'll catch it. So I'm gonna grab a rod, and we're gonna just start from the butt of the rod, and we're gonna work our way down to the end of the rod, and then I'll get into some technique. But first, so slow pitch jigging's origins come from Japan. A gentleman named Yorihiro Sato started slow pitch jigging, and this dude is just almost like a savant. He's just a mad genius when it comes to putting jigs down, and he has a real understanding of the gear and how to entice fish to entice fish to bite the jig. And his background actually is marine biology, and he just understands a lot about fish patterns and things like that. And he really, if you think that what I'm about to tell you is technical, you should hear from this guy. It's crazy. So I did have an opportunity to go to Japan and I got to fish with Higashi Moro, who's like one of 2 guys that he taught how to slow pitch jig, and it was very enlightening for me. It was a really, really neat experience, and I got to dig even deeper into what has become just like a complete obsession for me, and something that I'm just love and I'm passionate about it. And I think our gear definitely shows that we really love what we're doing, and we want to catch fish, you know, because we're using what we're selling. But so we'll start with the rods. Let me grab something real quick. All right. So these are the rods that I use, and you're gonna notice that people have made fun of us all over the place. I remember being in Guatemala, and I wish my Spanish was a lot better at the time because I could have defended myself. But granted, I'm almost fluent now, but then I didn't know. But they were calling them Toys R Us rods, right? Right. I've been in where did they call us trout rods? Oh, in Louisiana, trout rods. California, what are you gonna do with those things? And we've been laughed at getting on the boats, generally not getting off of the boats, you know. So, you know, I almost hit the sandwiches, sorry. I've learned to let my rod do my talking for me on the boat, and I keep my mouth shut until it's go time. But in any case, biggest grouper I've caught on a rod like this was a 84-pound Mystic grouper in the Bahamas. But so the reason why this rod is so thin, it's designed to impart an action on the jig. It's not designed necessarily to fight the fish, and that's why we generally lean more towards you know, nicer reels, something with a little bit of oomph to it, because the rod is designed to work the jig. And you'll notice that there's power levels on them, right? So a lot of rods will have line ratings on them. We don't rate slow pitch jigging rods for line ratings. We rate them for the jigs that they can work, right? So in other words, if this rod right here is a power 2, it has a jig gram rating of max 300 grams. So the next one up, the power 3, would probably be max 400, power 4, like 500. But granted, there's no universal rating, right, in the US. So like manufacturers are not putting a flex on this rod and saying, yeah, this is, you know, this is 300 because it pulls this much. There's not a universal rating. So us as the guys that are manufacturing it, we kind of give it the ratings. And so if you're gonna buy a slow pitch jigging rod, you probably want to buy it from somebody who slow pitch jig, because they know what jigs that you want to work on the rods. There has been a lot of slow pitch rods that have come out, and I'm like, that's not quite right, you know. And so a lot of guys have tried, but you know, you definitely want to have somebody who's fished jigs before. So another thing that you'll notice about this rod in particular is that the guides are spiral wrapped, and there's a lot of like, it's got to wrap to the left, and then it's got to be a left-hand reel, right to the right-hand reel. I don't really get into that because you're kind of splitting hairs at this point. But when it comes to slow pitch jigging, for me personally, I prefer a spiral wrap, and the reason why is this: when you're jigging, a lot of times you leave slack in the line and you allow the jig to fall. But when you leave that slack in the line, what can happen is the wind can blow the line over top of your rod blank, and this will help prevent, not completely stop it, but tip wrap. So then the line just falls right off because the guides are pointed down. And then another thing interesting about this rod, so this is our Trinity rod. It's actually, we manufactured this with Daiwa and their manufacturing. Another cool thing about this rod is, you guys probably can't see it from all the way there in the back, but I'm just going to tell you that if you look down this rod, the first stripper guide is right in line with the reel seat. The second guide goes that way, and then it rolls this way, the other way. So that's called a neutral guide system. which is something that we opted to do in our rod, because whenever you're jigging, a lot of times, not so much fighting the fish. When you fight the fish, level winding is not so hard, right? Because you're not pulling in a lot of line quickly. But when you're jigging, sometimes you can tend to pack to one side or the other, and the neutral guide system will help kind of keep that line more towards the center of your reel. That way it'll kind of roll one way and then roll back the other way. However, it doesn't level wind for you. It just kind of assists in the level winding. But so a lot of guys prefer rods like 6 foot and under. I think the older that I'm getting now, like, you know, I'm not an old guy, but I'm no spring chicken anymore either, right? So the longer the rod, the harder it is to lift the jig, right? Like basic physics, right? The longer it is. So I'm kind of going shorter and shorter as I go, because I know how to put some movement on the jig with a shorter rod. But I would say if you're just starting out, if you're young and you've got the back and you can do it, you know, a longer one's definitely going to help you to put some action on the jig as you're going. It won't hurt for sure. But guys are getting shorter and shorter with these rods. I've seen them even as short as 5 foot. So I'm like 6'1". You can kind of tell how tall this one is, about 6'5". But so that's kind of slow pitch rods in a nutshell. So you can, obviously, the more you pay for it, the better that the blank is going to be, the better that the guides are. Usually the guides will change the price on the rods as you get into the more expensive ones. This one in particular has an air guide system, which means that the guides are actually carbon fiber. There's no metal in these guides. They will never rust. So making this the lightest slow pitch jigging rod in the United States. So it's pretty cool. It's a beauty. Very proud of this rod in particular. So next thing up, the reel. I'm gonna grab one.
What's the price point on that rod?
That one's $600. Yeah, it's not cheap. Not cheap, but you get what you pay for with it. So this is something new that we're proud of that just came out. So this is the Johnny Jigs slow pitch jigging reel. Had a couple options when engineering this. Is a ground up engineering of this reel, and I had engineers in the US as well as overseas that helped us put this together, and they said you can value engineer this and get it at a nice price point, or you can put the best stuff in it and, you know, basically have a very, very quality expensive reel. And I'm like, I'm kind of selfish in that sense, because I know I gotta fish this thing, so so I went on the higher end of things. So in a slow pitch jigging reel, you're looking for a narrow spool, and the reason why is when we're jigging, we're using the reel as part of our handle, so we're constantly holding on to the reel. And if you have a wide spool, it's going to be very uncomfortable for you. So you can imagine if you have a wide spool, your hand is going to sit this way while trying to grab the reel. You're going to end up grabbing up here or something like that. So by having a narrow spool, you're able to actually use that as a complete handle. And now you have a lot of control over the reel. So if you're holding up here as you're jigging, you got a lot of wobble. You don't have as much ability to control everything, as well as whenever you're fighting a fish, you know, you actually have that control of putting your thumb on top of here and no movement. So the narrow spool is important for us. Also goes back to the level winding, right? So as you're jigging, this thing doesn't click out of spool lock. Whenever you're jigging, you can end up packing to one side or the other. So having a narrow spool also kind of helps you to fight going to one side or the other. The other thing you'll notice is that this has a really oversized handle for the size reel, right? It looks like almost a little too much, and that's because when we're fighting the fish, we're using and we're jigging, this handle is another part of just having that control over your complete outfit, right? And you gotta imagine, we're jigging from anywhere from 80 feet to the deepest that I've dropped the jig to the bottom was like 1,500 feet. No, I take that back, 2,000 feet. in Japan. I dropped down 2,000 feet on a manual reel. I don't recommend it. Get an electric. It's terrible. They tortured me in Japan. They're like, I felt like Daniel's son and Mr. Miyagi was like, wax on, wax off. I was like, right? But so the Japanese mindset when it comes to slow pitch jigging is like everything is supposed to be purposeful, right? Everything you do is purposeful. However, that's not our culture here that I've noticed in the United States, right? It's just not the way that we operate. We want stuff to just work, right? So they're gonna have a straight guide system right down the top, and you should never have the wind blow over it because you should be watching it, you know, and also you won't need a level wind reel because you should be paying attention to that. So I think as a company, Johnny Jigs, we've really said, okay, what do we want, right? And we're hoping to speak for everybody, you know, here in the States is like, what is it that's going to work best for us? So definitely is, you know, we moved into things that, you know, just have a little more functionality, little more utility. So with this reel, you'll notice that it does have level line on it, and then the big power handle, you know, obviously for control. This knob is actually molded to my hand exactly. Forget everybody else, right? It's a perfect thing. So you can go star drag or you can go lever drag. Really, it's up to the angler. You will find that, you know, Shimano has an OSHA jigger reel that is super smooth. Something about the mechanics of the star drag just make it a little bit smoother than the lever drag. But for me personally, I prefer the lever drag only for the sake that I know my strike position right there, and I know that that's as much drag as I would ever want to put on this line that I'm using to keep me, you know, from popping off or breaking off on a fish. So another thing with the reels is electrics, right? So I didn't bring my electrics to Japan because the guy I went with, Chad Boucher, who is another just incredible slow pitch jigging guy, and he was like, "Don't bring your electrics. They're not gonna let you use the electrics whenever you get there." And when I got there, I asked Higashimura, I'm like, "What do you think about the electrics?" He's like, "Oh, if it works." And I'm like, you know, I could have totally brought the electrics. So there's micro electrics now, right? And so Daiwa brought in the Seaborg 300J last year, right? And that's after we've imported thousands of them from Japan to get to the US market, but they finally brought it into Daiwa USA this year. So the 300J, I wish I would have brought it with me, and I apologize, guys. It's been a heck of a couple of weeks for me, but it's about the size of this reel. It's an electric reel. It's about the size of this reel. You can put somewhere around 600 yards of 20-pound test on these electric reels. And what we do is we have these battery packs that just kind of sit across your chest like a satchel and plug into the reel, and now you're mobile all the way around the boat. So while all the guys are deep dropping with the LPs and they're big, you know, Daiwa, you know, 1200s and thousands, we're right there with them with these little tiny mobile setups on the boat, and it's pretty cool. You look a little bit like Inspector Gadget with your battery pack and everything, wires and stuff, but it's easy, right? So we were, I would dare to say we were probably some of the first guys doing that with the electric reels out here. So it's something, and so there's an older gentleman, part of our team, also part owner of Johnny Jigs, Will, and he's like slowly gotten to the point where he's like anything past 200 feet he's using the electric, which is like insane to us. We'll jig 200 feet all day long. You know, for me, my cutoff's probably like about 600 or 700 feet, and then I'm looking to switch to my electrics. But just to let you know that you can use, if you're like, man, I'm not doing all this jigging, like there's no way. Well, you can switch over to that electric anytime you want. Nobody can tell you no, right? You can use it anytime you want. So yeah, it's kind of a cool thing, the progression. So on this reel in particular, I could fit about 500 yards of 20-pound test. So I'm pretty comfortable in going out for golden tiles. I'm comfortable out to about 1,000 feet jigging. So where I'm from in Pompano Beach, we get into the golden tilefish anywhere between 800 and 1,000 feet, and it's pretty much an annual thing for us. We love going out for them, and we'll jig those depths, and as well as we spent a lot of trips out at Pulley Ridge, whether we go on the Yankee Cap. There's a couple other boats that will go out for those deep drop chips, but you can do that and just bring jigging gear. I proved that. You know, it was a thing for us. Like I considered myself a good bait fisherman over the years. You know, since I was a kid, my uncle always took me out on the Yankee Cap on 3-day trips, and the first time I went out there, and I was like, all I'm bringing is, not the first time, but I made it a point at one point in time to go out there and bring just jigs. And I was like, you get on the boat and it's that long steam out for 12 hours and you just sit there and scratch your head and you're like, what was I thinking? Why did I do this? And man, I probably had the most epic trip of my life, and I was sold on slow pitch jigging. But so Daiwa makes a good reel. Shimano makes a good reel. Penn's got the Fathom. That's halfway decent. My progression has been into, you know, wanting to have the level line on the reel, so that's where I'm at today. So next thing is line, and I kind of touched on this a little bit, but we are line nerds. And I'll tell you why. It's important, especially if you're deep dropping. So say you're going out here and you're going for red snapper. You're going to be between 100 and 250 feet. Go 30-pound test all day. It's all you need, right? You can go through. You can even bump it up to 40 if you wanted to. But once you get past, you know, that 250, you start getting to 300, 400, 500 feet. You guys got some current out here, right? Am I wrong in saying that? You've got some pretty heavy current, so you've got to be able to cut through the current. So we start scoping it down to like 20-pound tests. I've seen guys go, as low as 10-pound tests on the water, which is, it sounds crazy, but sometimes if you're dropping in 2,000 feet, you got to be able to cut through the current, and you'll notice it more jigging than you will with anything else. So I'll just give you guys a little story. So Chris and I decided that we were going to try and catch golden tilefish on the jigs the first time. Both of us, and this was many years ago, both of us had 40-pound test on. We went out where I know the golden tilefish live because I've been there before and caught them on bait, you know, with the LPs and stuff. And we dropped down our jigs and none of us could feel bottom. We're not feeling bottom. I think our speed over ground was somewhere around like 2 and 3 knots. And so it was a head scratching moment, right? There's no information, there's nothing on YouTube for it at this moment. So we went back and we're like, we need heavier jigs and we need thinner line. And both of us scoped back to 20-pound tests and went from like 300-gram jigs and bumped it up to like 400-gram jigs, and then you could feel bottom, right? So and I believe we both limited out that day, which is 2 fish, right? But that's all you can catch. But we were able to feel bottom. So if you could feel bottom, you've got a chance. But the second thing is this: if you're dropping down that deep, even 300 feet, you know, after reel up after reel up after reel up, you want to stay vertical on your jig as much as possible, and I'll dig into that a little bit more later, but you don't want to have to keep reeling up. So if you can't touch bottom, you don't know where your jig's at, you don't know if you're hitting the spot, you don't know where you're at in the water column, you know, your jig is kind of just floating in the abyss. By cutting down the diameter of the line, now you're able to stay vertical straight up and down from the jig. You're able to put a movement on it, as well as you're able to feel bottom whenever you drop it back down. So like Daiwa makes a good J braid that we use. We like the multicolor braid, just because you can count colors. Say a school of tuna comes around or something like that, you're able to reel it back up into the face. But generally, like something like 0.19 millimeters will be like the thinner stuff, and then it goes up to like 0.25 millimeters with the 30-pound test, and possibly into the 40-pound test, depending on the brand of line that you're using. But we just came out with a slow pitch jigging line, and here's us thinking of you guys. Are you ready for this? So all of the metered line is 10 meters. It's 10 meters, right? So it's 33 feet, and I don't know if you guys know where Broward County is, but I am a part of their, I'm a victim of Broward County school education system. I go 33, 66, 99, oh crap. Right, I can't count anymore. So we took our line and we changed it colors every 25 feet. Not only did we change colors every 25 feet, we made it red, white, and blue. Yeah. And then we added black in there because we had added another color, but America, right? So that it's kind of a cool thing, because now I'm like, there's no guessing in it. Obviously, I had my tricks of counting the line down, counting the line up. Whenever I knew I was doing it in intervals of 33, but 25 feet really works a lot better for us. But you can definitely, if you guys want to check that out, you can go over to JohnnyJigs.com and see it there. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring some with me. So the next thing is fluorocarbon. Give me one sec here. So I'm still learning. Every day I'm learning. Every time I get to fish somewhere with someone new, I always learn something. I learn a lot from the young guys. I learn a lot from the older guys. I mean, it don't matter who it is. Like I'm always on the edge of my seat, hoping to learn something. And I've been fishing 50-pound tests quite regularly. Fluorocarbon, 10 to 12 feet, 2 arms length, right? That's how I do it. I pull it out 2 arms length. Nothing longer, and I make that connection right to my braid. I use either a PR knot. If you're not familiar with a PR knot, it's a knot that's done with a tool, or you can use an FG knot. I'll show you one of those knots. Actually, I'll cut a piece off so you guys can kind of pass that around and check it out. So for deep dropping, I was using 50. I was using 50 shallow, but what I found was, because my PR knot is 100% knot, if I get hung up on the bottom in deep water, what's going on is I'm breaking at my line instead of at the leader. It's not even breaking at the jig. So what I've done is, as I've gone deeper into areas where I think that the bottom is sticky, I started scoping down. I did 40, I've even gone 30-pound tests. The fish, and it's not that the fish are leader shy at those depths, because I don't feel like they're leader shy at those depths. However, it's the whole getting hung up on the bottom and then having to break off. And if you've ever hung up on the bottom in 800 plus feet with a slow pitch jigging outfit, it is next to impossible, right? Actually, one thing I forgot to mention, on our reel, instead of on the side, that button that I clicked, it's not a clicker, it's a spool lock. It locks the spool for you, and that way you can actually, you don't have to thumb the spool and you're fighting, to keep the drag from spinning and stuff like that. You just wait until it gets tight and then pops. But it's quite some work. But so deeper dropping, I'd recommend, if you're on a sticky bottom, go ahead and you could scope it down to 30-pound tests. So you're doing 20 main line or 15 main line, and then 30 or 40-pound test. But if the bottom's not that sticky, they're not going to be leader shy at those depths. Go ahead and pop 50 on there, and that way you know that you got a better chance of getting the fish up. So PR knot and FG knot. I'm gonna cut this thing off. Give me one sec. I want to show you guys this. So I did, I don't know if you guys have, maybe some of you have checked out my YouTube channel, but I I did 2 videos on the PR knot versus the FG knot, okay? And trust me, his heads rolled and everybody wanted to argue, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that, and that's why I made the second video. And trust me, I wanted the FG knot to win. However, I couldn't get an FG knot to break at full strength. So the knot that I tie is a PR knot, and let me show you guys. I'm gonna cut this off. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pass this around for you so you can take a look at it. So it's done with the bobbing tool and it's whipped around. So what happens with this knot is it's 100%. So in other words, it'll never break right here. It's going to break in your fluoro here, or it's going to break in your line here. But I'm going to give you guys this to kind of check out. So this is kind of for slow pitch guys. This is the knot that we use, right? Or an FG, and there's a reason for it. If you guys can see, I know you can't from way back there, but I'm gonna pass it back there. It's super streamlined, right? It's barely thicker than the fluorocarbon. It's only because the braid is wrapped around it. And the reason why we do that is if you look at the guides on my rod, they're small, right? So if you're reeling this into the guide and out of the guide, if you're using an Alberto knot or one of the larger knots, you're gonna pop the guides out. So you need something that's streamlined, and it just happens to be, not an opinion, the best fluoro to braid connection you could possibly make. However, not everybody wants to break out a tool to do this, but I'm gonna pass this around so you guys can take a look at it.
Do you have what the tool looks like?
Yeah, I'll pull it out for you. Look at that. Pass it around so you guys can see it. So this is the tool, and it's this is one that is made by Centaur, and you can see like I still got some line on there from my last fishing trip. So basically what I do is I spin the braid onto this tool. It goes out this little hole right here, keep spinning, and then I wrap the fluoro around my hand, and then I let this tool basically hang like that, and I whip it. I whip it around the fluoro, and I whip it around the braid. And then to finish the knot, I'm not going to get into too crazy details, but if you know how to finish an FG knot, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's just a bunch of overhand knots. Some people get into all kinds of crazy, different ways of finishing the knot, but for me, I've never had it fail, so I just a bunch of overhand knots, and that's basically it. But this tool in particular is kind of expensive, but there's one for like $25 on our website, and there's 2 videos that you guys can watch. And if anybody wants to argue with me if a FG is better than a PR knot, I am ready for you right after this. Bring it on. But so next is jigs, right? So we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes. Let's do this. So jig selection, right? So there's a rule of thumb, and this is not, don't etch this in stone, because really the ocean is going to tell you what jig to use. Plain and simple, and I'll explain that a little deeper. But the rule of thumb is a gram per foot, right? So if we went out to 200 feet, we would use a 200 gram jig, right? 300 feet, 300 gram jig, so on and so forth. But when I go out to 2,000 feet, I am not using a 2,000 gram jig. That is monstrous. I mean, just to kind of put it in perspective, that's a 400 gram jig, and this thing is like, seriously, you can get some serious biceps just doing this with the 400 gram jig. So you're not, generally, if I have to go over 800 grams, I'm not fishing, right? I'm not going to do it. The current's too much, and I've rarely been in a situation where I couldn't get to the bottom. But 800 grams is kind of like the max. It's just too much work, too much on your back. But so a gram per foot. However, if you go out to 200 feet, right, and you are staying completely vertical and you're just absolutely tapping bottom every time, and you never have to reel up, and you realize like, hey, I can scale back. I can go to 150 grams. I can go to even 100 grams. We do it, and it's for sake of stamina purposes, right? So where that way you can continue jigging, and also, you know, the shape has a lot to do with it as well, being able to stick to bottom. So something long and thin like this, granted, is not going to give you as much action because there's not as much surface area for it to flutter. However, it's going to get down to the bottom, you know, and it's going to definitely help you in heavier current situations versus something that's a lot wider like this. It's going to give you more action. I would say 90% of my bites have been on the fall. It's just whenever they eat. It's a wonderful thing whenever you drop your jig down, you don't even hit bottom and you have a fish on. Like that, I love it when fishing is easy, right? So that's the case. It's a lot of times just on the fall. And so shape is gonna play a big role in just being able to stay vertical, but not only that, it plays a big role in what are the fish biting that day, right? So each one of these are designed to impart a different action in the water, and it's kind of like what was it? I was out fishing for big tunas, throwing NLBNs with my buddy Ryan a week ago, and we got into a big school, and he's getting hooked up. He keeps flipping black fins in the boat. We couldn't get past the black fins, but I'm throwing this NLBN a country mile and reeling it in, and it's not working, and he keeps flipping black fins in, and I'm like, okay, Ryan, what are you doing, bro? And he's like, first off, you gotta reel faster, give it a couple more pops, right? And it was just something about the action of the lure, from reeling it a little bit faster, it changed the action of the lure and give him a couple pops. Well, the same thing with a slow pitch jig. By either slowing it down or speeding it up, you can change the action of the jig, but also you could change the action of the jig much easier by just changing the jig, right? Putting a different jig on. So the guys in Japan definitely harped on that a lot, of like, just change the jig out. So everybody gets hyper focused on color, when really there's quite a few elements that you can think about when you're jigging, is that you can change out the action of the jig. Will probably be more helpful than changing to the same exact jig and just a different color, right? So, you know, same jig, different color, different size, but so that'll change the action on your jig. Second thing that you can do with changing the action on the jig, and this is something for the young guy in the back, we're going to talk about rods a little bit more and go back to the jig versus rods. So another thing to change the action is you could change the power level of the rod. So, and what I experienced was I'm using a number 4 rod, a heavy rod with a heavy jig, and I'm getting this super heavy, punchy action. I'm doing the same thing as my buddy Chris Doyle right next to me. Neither of us are getting bit. Chris switches over to his Power 2 lighter rod, same jig, and it just slows everything down, and the dude was just killing it right next to me. It's one of those trips where I don't like Chris, but it was because he changed the action of the jig by changing the power level of the rod. So don't get so locked into saying, okay, well, this is rated for 400 grams. I cannot fish a 200 gram jig on this. You can't, because you're going to change the action of the jig by changing the rods. You'll change the action of the jig by changing the assist hooks. You'll change the action of the jig by changing the line that's on it, and a lot of times what I've noticed is it's the action of the jig that the fish are looking for whenever you're dropping slow pitch jigs. That one got bit up. So next thing, rigging the jig. So we use what we call assist hooks, and you can either use 2 assist hooks at the top, and they're generally tied together like this. These that I have in my hand, I don't have a tandem set in my case here. You could have a tandem set just like that, or you can have singles. Me personally, I like to match the top with the bottom. So historically, like you guys will remember the speed jigs, there's always that one hook on the top, which works great for speed jigging. And I'll tell you guys the difference between slow jigging and speed jigging. I know some of you are probably thinking that. So we go one on the top, one on the bottom. And what we're trying to do is make sure that the hooks don't overlap like this, right? Because if they do, you'll find yourself pulling up a jig that looks like this, and you're going to be wondering why you weren't catching fish, and then you're going to realize because you didn't really have a screaming chance, right? So we want to make sure that there's like at least a little gap between the two, or just barely touching like that. And so if I am on a sticky bottom situation, kind of like we talked about with the fluorocarbon, you can remove the hooks from the bottom. It's definitely going to change the action of your jig, but most of the time I'm going to fish hooks on top, hooks on the bottom. And I guess the big question is why single versus double. So this is going to be a little more streamlined. It's going to be a little bit better for deeper water fish. And then also what I've noticed just over the years and my experience fishing the doubles, the idea is that the two hooks on the bottom grab the fish like this, and the two hooks on the top got the fish like this, you know, one in and on the other, or top and bottom, whatever the case may be. But what I've noticed is that a lot of times, even though my hooks are tied correctly and they're facing this way, because the idea is if he bites it, then it does this, right? And they get both sides of it. But really what's going on is that the hooks are both landing exactly in the same place in the fish's mouth. And now it's harder for me to get past the barb to where it's a proper hook set. So when guys pull up hooks and they say, oh, this hook is garbage, all right? How many of you said that? And it's bent out straight, it's because a lot of times the fish doesn't get past the barb, and now he's got this leverage on you and he straightens the hook out. So by going single, whenever I do a hook set, I'm able to get past that barb, and now the fish is sitting right here where he's supposed to be, and that's where your strength's at in the hook. However, you know what, if I'm out and I'm looking for beeliners or vermilion snappers, sorry, I was just in Destin, they call them beeliners there, vermilion snappers, I will switch over to the tandem set of hooks with a thinner wire, so I can, because those guys are so sneaky, it's hard to get them sometimes, and I'll be able to hook into them. But so I lean more towards the single hooks, one on top, one on bottom, and that's just coming from my experience over the years of being on the water with them. So the next thing you'll notice is at the top, and I know you guys can't see that in the back there, but I'm going to try and explain this to you like I'm talking to the radio, right? This looks like a keychain, right? And it's called a split ring. I use triple wrap split rings. The reason why I use the triple wrap versus like the double wrap is just they're a little bit easier to open with the same strength, so you can actually pull these open without having to you know, break your pliers. It's pretty easy. And so that little keychain hooks onto a solid ring that is attached to the assist hooks, right? And the solid ring is exactly what I said. It's just a solid ring of stainless steel. And then the next thing that I add to my top set of assist hooks is a ball bearing swivel. So not just a swivel, but actually a ball bearing swivel will connect to that keychain, and then the keychain will connect everything together. The split ring, that's what it's called, a split ring. So the split ring connects to the jig, split ring connects to the solid ring on the assist hook, and then split ring connects to the ball bearing swivel, and then the ball bearing swivel connects to my fluorocarbon. Did you guys follow me on that? Yeah? Was that I'll show. Listen, if that was like too much for you to kind of put together and picture in your head, come up and see me, and I'll put this together for you so you can kind of see what it does. So the top gets a ball bearing swivel, and generally with a slow pitch jig, they're gonna have an eye on it, and that's gonna tell you what the top of the jig is, and that's where you're gonna tie your line. If for some reason you don't have a ball bearing swivel with you, it's okay. You could tie directly to the solid ring on the assist hook. And the reason why I say the solid ring on the assist hook, because then if the split ring does happen to fail for whatever reason, you still got the fish, right? So the reason why we do use the ball bearing swivels though is because the grouper and snapper, even the tuna tend to spin coming up. They do that death roll. Snapper will tend to spin coming up as well. And a lot of times your jig will tend to spin. So again, to the movement of the jig right there. And not only that, I've got a way bigger range of motion, right? I can top the ceiling here, whereas here I'm kind of just doing this. So now you're able to actually put a good movement on the jig. So that's the first thing. Granted, when I fight the fish, you know, I go right back onto the arm, and now I'm fighting them under the arm. But this is just for working the jig whenever you're slow pitch jigging. So let's say I drop it down to the bottom, right? Boom, there's bottom. Generally, I like to give it a quick pop right off the bottom right away, right? Just let's see if anybody's home. A lot of times that quick pop, as soon as I drop it back down, something's gonna eat it. But I give it a quick pop off the bottom, and then I go into my cadence. And there's a lot of different ways that you can work the jig, and you switch it up throughout the day until you find something that's getting bit, and then you repeat the process, right? So you could do a short lift, you know, medium, or you could do a long fall where you get way up here with the rod tip, and then at the same time you're going to do, you know, you could do a quarter, you could do half, you could do a full turn of the handle to load that rod tip, right? So what I'm doing is I'm lifting up, I'm leaving slack on the line, right? Complete slack on the line, so now the jig can fall. So what happens if you leave tension on the line, right? The jig is just going to do this, right? But if I flick it up and I leave slack on the line, now the jig is designed, it's designed under no tension to turn sideways like this and flutter, right? And that's what the fish want. They don't want the jig doing this. They want something fluttering. They want it to look like it's wounded, injured. You know, it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's risk versus reward, right? It's an easy prey, right? It's easy to eat. So you want to leave that slack in the line, and let the jig fall down. As soon as you feel tension, that's whenever you do the quarter turn, the half turn, the full turn. And what I'm doing is I'm loading that rod tip, and at the same time, I'm lifting the rod at the same time as well. So now I've got this, you know, really nice bend in the rod, and I'm allowing the rod to do the work for me to lift the jig. And I just give it a little pop back up, and then repeat the process. There are times when you could just let the jig hang there. You know, I don't know if you guys know who Captain Bouncer Smith is. You know, I've been proven wrong many times. And Captain Bouncer, we went out pretty close to here, and he was scoped way the heck out and just kind of sitting there. And I'm like, Cap, that's not gonna really work. And we all reeled up our jigs, and then Bouncer, you know, 2 years later, reeled up his jig, but he had a snowy grouper on it. And he's like, told you. And I'm like, all right. I mean, even a blind dog once in a while, Captain Bouncer, gets a bone. But in any case, it's definitely going to be better for you to stay vertical, and I'll explain this a little bit better for you, right? Because the fish, they're not eating, they're not coming up and sniffing a piece of dead bait, right? They're eating this because it's moving, it's live, right? It looks live to them. They're not sniffing and saying, that smells delicious, let me eat it. They're eating it because it looks delicious, that's it. They're using their eyes, right? So if the jig is scoped way out here, right, with my line, and my line's doing this, as I'm lifting here, I'm not getting any movement on the jig. That's why the staying vertical is important, because if the jig is straight up and down, now I can actually impart, you know, action on the jig. That's definitely a important key part. Granted, Bouncer Smith proved me wrong, and there has been times where I've just kind of hung the jig there just to see if they'll eat it, and they've ate it. So weird things happen in the ocean, but I can tell you from experience and doing it over and over again, staying vertical and putting the movement on the jig definitely works. So shallow water, right? So as we get under like 100 feet, a lot of times I'll actually even switch over to a spinner because you have more action. There is jigging spinners out there, and I know that some of you don't like running that far out to the 3, 4, 500 feet. So in the shallower stuff, anything under 100 feet, you can use a spinner. It works. It's nice in the shallow water because you could actually cast that jig out and still feel the jig and put action on the jig and kind of work it back to you on the bottom. But once we get past like 100 to like 200 feet, I would say like 200 feet is whenever it's definitely a conventional game. It's going to be a lot easier to fight the fish with the conventional. So fighting, let me see, jigging technique. I can tell you, guys can talk until you're blue in the face about jigging technique in deep water, but really it's all about just tapping the bottom and being able to feel bottom again. If you're in 600 feet, the last thing that you want to do is be reeling up and down. So if you could tap bottom in 600 feet and you can actually just get a little bit of movement on the jig, you're doing it right. Like, you're not going to do a bunch of crazy techniques or anything. The trick is to be able to get and get your, just to set you guys' expectations right. If you could tap bottom 10 times before all of a sudden the jig goes into the abyss, you're doing pretty good, right? I remember starting out just being like, how do these guys stay vertical all the time like this? And I realized that like they don't. They're reeling up and they're resetting so they can feel the bottom whenever you hit spots. Let's see, guys. I think I ran through just about everything. Is there any questions that you guys might have about slow pitch jigging? Yes, sir.
You said you were gonna expound on slow pitch and vertical.
Oh, that's right. Forgot about that. You're right. Okay. So vertical jigging, high speed jigging, right? The name says it all. So high speed jigging. Generally, these guys, they got one hook on the top, and it's the greatest way to catch amberjack for sure, right? If you like amberjack, go high speed jigging. You're gonna get them. So the difference is this: high speed is a fleeing bait fish, really fast, moving up, right? Super fast, and the predators are gonna chase it, okay? Because this thing is lively and it is running for its life. They go, I'm gonna eat that, right? And they run up and they eat it. It's a reactionary strike. So is slow pitch jigging. It's a reactionary strike. However, now you're imitating a wounded bait fish, which hence slow pitch jigging. High speed jigging is for young guys. It will torture you. If you did it like 3 times in a row, like I just want to go, Uncrustable and crawl in the cabin somewhere. Like, I'm done, right? After 3 times. Slow jigging, you could do it all day long, because it's essentially effortless, especially when you start switching into electric. So it's a wounded bait fish, right? So you lift up and then you let this thing flutter down, and it's imitating something that's injured, something that's easy to eat. And generally the fish that, listen, I've fished, I've been super blessed to fish all over the world, and I've caught tunas, and I've caught all kinds of pelagic. I've caught cobia, I've caught wahoo, you name it on the jig. But I can tell you that my target species and what I love and what I think this is really designed for is bottom fish, grouper, snapper, tilefish, the fish that live on the bottom. That's the ones that we're going for. But next question, anybody? Yes, sir.
If you had to, so obviously everybody can't have like 4 different rods on your boat.
Yep.
If you had to pick a rod for, say, like 200 to 400.
That's a good question.
Yeah. What's your go-to rod?
That's a great question. 2 to 400. I'm probably gonna go with a power 3, but I'm gonna give you a little nugget from the guy who started this all, Yoshihiro Sato. When Sato started slow pitch jigging, he used 1 rod and 1 jig. That was it, right? And so this dude could just absolutely slow it down and do what he needed to do to change the action of the jig with one rod. This is basically a system designed for us who don't want to think that hard, right? So you can change that rod and actually change the action of the jig. However, I would go with something heavier. So between 2 and 400, I would definitely use a power 3 just so you can get that punchiness on it. But this guy would change up his assist hooks to change the action on the jig. He would change the line to change the action on the jig, and he's kind of a wicked genius. And so that's why the jigs with different shapes were designed to actually just kind of make it easier. So you just switch up the jigs, but go a little on the heavier side in case you do decide to go deeper. So go power 3.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What about the hollow core guideless rods? What's your opinion on those?
Hollow core. Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, those are awesome. Those are awesome. So it's the Spaeth lineup from Temple Reef.
Yeah.
And so it's a horse of a different color. So it's a rod with no guides on it, right? And basically the line goes through the blank, right? So Daiwa did this a long time ago, right? It was the Sabiki rod, or it was the goggle eye rod. However, Temple Reef was the first ones to do it with the slow pitch jigging rod. So we bought Temple Reef because of the rods that they have. And Brandy, who was the founder of Temple Reef, was just an absolute wizard when it came to designing rods. And so that rod, the thing about it is, because the line goes through the middle of the blank, you have sensitivity in the rod like nothing else, right? You have full connection to that. Like you will feel the tiniest fish bump into your jig on the bottom. And then the second benefit of that is that there's no tip wrap. It's impossible. If you tip wrap, then you need to stop fishing, because you just accomplished the impossible Googa move you can never do, right? And so I've taken that rod out personally, and I loved the action of it, but I did want to kind of get some input from my buddies that are gurus in the slow pitch jigging world. And I can tell you that my one buddy that I went to Japan with, he said that's probably the rod with the Temple Reef rod with the best action that you had. And I was like, cool, I like it. So it's a great rod. Fish that with confidence if you get one.
Yeah, I've been traumatized. One time I had tip wrap, and either a giant tuna or a big AJ took the jig, ran with it, snapped 2 guides off and broke the line, lost like 200 yards of braid.
That's what happens with tip wrap.
Yeah.
Cost of doing business, my friend. Yes, sir.
You had mentioned that you're presenting these jigs and that they're not attracted to the smell. They're keying in on the sight. Some guys tip their jigs with squid.
Oh no.
Or fish bites or something
Sacrilegious.
like that.
Oh god. Yeah. So sure, if you want to fish bait, go ahead, but you're not jigging anymore. You know what I mean? Like that's like a bass guy tipping his artificial lures. But so yeah. So listen. Whatever it takes to catch a fish, right? Whatever it takes to catch a fish. So if you're in a circumstance at night where like nothing's chewing the jig and you don't have a bait rod with you, yeah, go ahead. But if you've got a bait rod, just use a bait rod. It's because it's probably more effective than trying to bait fish with a jig. But, yes, sir.
How important is color and glow?
Yeah.
It's a million different jig colors. It gets very confusing.
Yeah, and so he's asking me how important is color and glow. And I can tell you just from my experience on the water, I have noticed at times that the fish do key into a color. However, action would definitely be top, and then color would be secondary for me. So, the old question, do fish see color? I don't know. And a lot of guys swear by glow, but I've seen guys with completely black jigs fishing in water deep enough to where there's absolutely, for sure, no light get bit. So I don't know how important it is, and I can tell you that some of the colors are designed to catch the fisherman, for sure. So we're just like fish. We like shiny stuff. Yes, sir. Way in the back, and then I'll come to you. Right. So here's the thing. Because this rod is designed to work the jig, it's not exactly designed to fight the fish. So we're going against everything that we were probably taught on the whole pumping and reeling thing, and like I could still hear my dad screaming, "Pump and reel, boy!" But actually, what we do is once you get that fish off the bottom, and if you guys check out our YouTube videos, you'll see I give them a pretty good work right in the beginning, where I'll pump him, and I'm doing these short pumps to where I'll make sure that fish is off the bottom. But once I know he's off the bottom, I'm doing two things. I'm gonna back off my drag a little bit just to make sure I don't put any more pressure on my thin line than I need to. And the second thing is I'll either point the rod down to the fish. My favorite position, if I can, if I'm on a center console and I can get my foot up on the gunnel, I just put my arm right across my leg like this, and my foot up on the gunnel, and I just reel on them, right? I make sure that there's tension on the line. But if you put this rod up here, fighting a big fish, you're gonna break it. But as long as you don't go over parallel to the ocean like this when fighting the fish, you're in good shape. So you can pump as far as that and then go back down. If you do watch my videos, you'll see sometimes I go a little bit higher, but I do know how far my rods can go. So definitely a different fighting technique. So it's all about the reel, right? So we're fighting him with the reel. You know, he takes, you know, and we just stay right there with the reel. No pumping necessary at some point. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Yes, sir, in the front.